My name is Doug Ferguson, and I'm the Weird Christian. So, anyway, I'm going to be doing a talk about Peter Zeihan's book, The World is Just, The End of the World is Just the Beginning, mapping up, his book. And first, when I was reading it, I was wondering who he is and what exactly he does. And he has quite a following, and people talk about him. Not like me. I'm just a normal guy. But in his epilogue, it actually talks more about who he is, and I found that was important to know what his book is about and how to understand his book. In the parts of it here, he says, let's see here. I'm just looking at the epilogue here right now. And, okay. I was reading it here, what he was. He says he's a student of history. He kind of is. I don't really agree with a lot of his interpretations of history, but that's normal for all historians. They all have different understandings, usually interpretation of what is really going on. But he has, I would say, a standard understanding of history according to what is taught. So, I tend to not have a standard understanding. For example, a lot of people say that the Inquisition killed millions of people and was really super bad. And from my reading of historical documents between, let's say, the King of Spain and Fernando and the Pope, Pius VI, I think. Anyway, when I read those letters, and other letters, I got the impression that actually the Catholic Church and the Inquisition actually saved a lot of lives. Most people don't realize that Spain was under the Islamic rule, Islamic influence for a long time. Well, rule kind of. There was lots of wars there, so it's hard to really say it was rural. But anyway, and they considered that time was a golden age, whereas a lot of other people didn't see it that way. But it just shows their idea of what golden ages mean to them. But anyway, that's another story. So where he would probably have the more standard version, where the Inquisition was all about murdering and false justice and so forth. They had the justices. I'm not saying they had the best justice system, and I'm not saying that the Catholics were, I'm not a Catholic, and I'm not saying the Catholics are perfect or anything like that. I'm just saying the history that's presented in most of the places is, the standard version is not very good. And I studied India, and my understanding of what happened, reading the sources there, is totally different than what you get out of the standard you hear with now. But he uses the standard version, and his thoughts are in that way. So, I'm just trying to figure out. I was reading here in the epilogue, and it was talking about who he was. A Democrat. Oh, yeah. He says, as a Green, I think I see a path forward, even if it isn't one of the most Green are convinced of. Okay. So he says he's a Green, which says something right there. Okay. And as a Democrat, little d, he says. I'm not sure what that means exactly. I know popular participation is the least bad form of government. And he believes in Democrat, so he doesn't believe in the Republic of the U.S. because he's a Democrat. He believes in, basically, if you believe in just democracy, you believe in mob rule. You don't really believe in rules rule. You believe that the mob rules, and that's Okay, that's just what it is. Anyway, I won't go any further than that. So, and he calls himself an optimist, and let's see what else he says. He has an internationalist. So this means that he's also talked to a lot of, the big guys, maybe the Bilderberg group or, the internationalists. So he's known there. So that's basically a big part, is to know that he is a green, so in this, and he is an internationalist. But he talks about that there's going to be a global collapse of things. And I agree that the governments are working towards that, but it doesn't have to be. But there's certain assumptions they're making that's forcing it to happen. Like they're forcing things to happen. So that, and you can see it, like we have a war in Ukraine, which didn't need to happen, but it's being forced to happen, really. And maybe you disagree with me that, but that's the way I see it. And there's other wars that were forced. And he thinks that America, he thinks that America allows for safety in trading routes, without pirates. Now, I'm not sure what kind of pirates he's talking about. Is he talking about national pirates? Like a nation is going out and pirating as a thing to do. And that's happened in the past. I mean, England pirated Spain, and Spain pirated different things. And, there was some piracy going on. Usually, ships would not necessarily want to pirate because there's high risk in piracy if you're fighting a ship that has similar capabilities as you, and there's a high risk of dying. So even if you're you'd be picking your targets basically. But you can have nations being pirates to other nations, but if you have agreements with, like, he was saying that once America, let's say it loses its power over international airspace, that all of a sudden all sorts of anarchy will happen. Well, no. You can still have flying in Europe. You can still even have flying to, North Korea if they'll let you. And you can have flying to China. You can have flying to Russia. Now, even in a war, you can commercially fly an airplane to Russia. Okay, as long as they know it's a commercial airplane, they're not going to shoot it down. And if they say, "Oh yeah, you can fly here," it's not going to happen. So as long as the nations have an agreement that they're not going to shoot down each other, that they're going to, it doesn't really make any difference whether America has its naval force out there. All they use their naval force is to intimidate other groups, other nations. And they don't use it actually to handle small piracy like in Somalia. They had no interest in that. In fact, there was a thing going on there where they were just allowing them to, and saying you can't arm your ship with any kind of bullets. And it wouldn't take much to stop that. You just have to have a 50 caliber long distance sniper rifle, and you could take out any of the bullets there. One guy. So it's, this idea of America doing something, it's kind of, they're not providing any peace. And in fact, they've caused a lot of instability in the nation, in the world. And of course, he being a Democrat, he probably doesn't really see that. How, maybe he does, I don't know. I don't know enough about him, but how Obama and Hillary Clinton destroyed Libya, and they're destroying Egypt, and they're destroying Syria, and how the Bushes went into Afghanistan and into Iraq, weapons of mass destruction. So if you're talking about huge piracy going on. I would say that it's mostly the Americans being the pirates. So, but he has a different understanding of that. So it's a different understanding than me. So I don't think America is really supplying stability in that regard. And he doesn't seem to understand what's going on for why they're, like, nobody seems to understand what happened during the First World War, why it happened, and nobody mentions that. I'll just do a quick thing there because that's important. It was about oil, and about oil in the Middle East and in the Ottoman Empire. So there was things going on in the Ottoman Empire, and everybody realized, hey, we got oil. And Germany, or Prussia, I guess you could call it, they were saying, hey, we want to get some agreements with Ottomans. So they were planning on making a rail line through Turkey into, the oil-producing areas, because Russia had its own thing, and they couldn't really rely on Russia. So they wanted their own, and you needed that for the industrial nation, to be an industrial nation, cheap oil, right? So that was the whole reason for the First World War. Now, you will not hear that in any books at all. But that's what it was. And I could go on more about that, but take a look and think about it. It's just, and they divided up the Ottoman Empire after, and so forth. But anyway, so that, so if as far as shortages and oil, it depends what the desire of the nation. Now, right now, he seems to be in the camp with the Bilderbergs and all that kind of stuff, which they're basically a lot of, I call them Malthusians. Where there's a guy named Malthus who, back in the 1800s, who thought that there was too many people and there not enough resources. So he thought we had to reduce the population. That's the thing. And so you have a huge push by Democrats. They've been pushing abortion clinics, and now they're pushing. We have groups that are pushing destruction of supply chains, and they want to micromanage. They want to micromanage everything, and it's hard to micromanage everything if there's so many people. So you want to limit that number. And so they've made up this narrative about carbon emissions, that it's going to destroy the planet. Now, Zeihan here, Peter Zeihan, he's gone in with this narrative about, carbon dioxide. He just accepts. He does that. He takes the narratives. He doesn't actually find out if the narratives have any backing to them. He just assumes that they do, and he just takes them and goes on that, which is one of the reasons why people listen to him, because when you go against the narrative, then people don't like that. Okay, so that makes you successful when you don't go in and you don't question the narrative, and you don't actually try to find the science of what's going on. So, like carbon dioxide, if you talk to PhDs like William Hopper or Patrick Moore, then you realize that carbon dioxide is not a poison, and it's not actually going to upset the climate. It hasn't upset the climate. It's a PR scam, and there's a reason why it's political. Okay, they allow China to do and India to do all its stuff, but they want to shut down the production in the industrialized world, basically, and turn another place. So, and they, even in here, he talks about, the depopulation of the planet. And when you really, they want to reduce the carbon. Okay, how do you reduce the carbon use? You eliminate people. That's how you do it. You can't do it with the solutions that he mentions. That it's obvious in the book, and he mentions that it's obviously you cannot. And Michael Moore, who's a Democrat also, he had a whole talk, a movie, a show, a documentary on it. You cannot and he didn't even go into the whole thing. You cannot reduce carbon emissions by making electronic vehicles or using equal carbon or equal power systems like solar and wind. Or you can, I mean, you can use geo sometimes, but and it's fine, but it's very localized, and like we're talking industrial outputs and constant output, and it's more constant than the solar and wind, that's for sure. But there's a huge carbon, if you're worried about carbon, a huge carbon debt for making any of these products, EVs. It takes years before they even get to equal carbon debt of actually getting out of carbon debt of just making a normal internal combustion engine. So and then the battery might die from that, and then you have to make another battery, and that's going to be another carbon debt. So the idea, I mean, it looks, you're not burning, you don't see any exhaust coming out of the machine, but to produce the machine, you're making tons of carbon. And then also to power it, you're making tons of carbon. And then if you want to do it in the vast to supply power for transportation for everybody, you have to increase, like he mentions in here, increase the grid and the power supplies tremendously, which you can't do. So you're putting, and at the same time they want to go green, so they want to reduce all the coal and oil. He doesn't even talk about coal, like it doesn't exist. But so they want to reduce all that. So what you're doing is you're cutting everything on both ends. You're making a product. The equal products are actually not equal. They're not good for the environment, and they produce a lot of CO2, which I don't mind. But they're actually much. Mining is much more dangerous. There's slave labor. It's all sorts of crap going on for that, and so it's nothing good from that. And yet people are virtue signaling. I'm driving around in a Tesla or whatever, and the governments are forcing the hand of automobile manufacturers and stuff like that. So so the only way, if you want to actually, and they have in their head that they have to reduce the carbon. Okay, if you actually know any historical figures about about climate, and you actually look into it, you realize there's no problem. It's not an issue. And I could go into that. I've gone into it before. I'm talking, if you look at patterns for, like, we'll just take the recent time of 3 million years. Okay, if you just look at that, you'll see that it's not a problem having carbon dioxide. And in fact, when plants first came on the scene, carbon dioxide was 15 times higher. And at one stage, when it was really high, I don't know, 15, 12 times higher than, Earth was an ice ball, so there was other factors in that, but the carbon it's not going to destroy the planet. In fact, it's good for the planet. It's what makes plants grow. Okay, and now the understanding of the cell blocks for the different Earth around the Earth. I mean, it's just, they make assumptions that just totally are. I just think they're kind of crazy. Anyway, but that's fine. Craziness is part of. It's a philosophy. I understand. There's lots of countries and groups that agree that they think craziness is the way to go. That's their prerogative. So, for this book, I mean, I could go into a lot of different things, but he uses the assumptions that are currently iterated by the people in power, and it's not going to help anybody. He's talking about that there's going to be a deglobalization. And I was trying to figure out, what does he mean by deglobalization? Well, what he means is that the U.S. won't be able to control the trade routes and protect them. I guess, I don't know if they really do any of that, but he thinks that they do. And so they won't be able to protect those routes. And so all of a sudden we'll lose all international trade, like shipping lanes. I think those assumptions are not true. Now, you can lose them, if you have a war. But he tends to think that wars are good. And I think that you can do a lot of things better without war. I think it's not very good, but he's got a lot of assumptions that are questionable. I don't like, he just goes with them, where if he was a really, I'll call it a deeper thinker, he would actually question whether these assumptions are legit. And I don't think many of the assumptions that are used in his book are legit. So it gets off as far as I'm concerned, off in the wrong foot. Like, if you say you can't use any of your energy sources, of course you're going to, especially ones that really helped your society build, you're going to have mass starvation. And that's basically what they're planning to do, is to shut down all energy reserves of different countries, like Western countries, where people have a different idea about how to live. Though we're kind of getting more to be this idea of lawlessness all across the board, which is big. And then there's also, the big thing about micromanaging the world. So both these things are going to be, there's just a disaster waiting, because they're making the assumptions. Basically, they want to tie both hands and tie your whole body, like the economy's whole body up, and then say, okay, produce for everybody. Like, everybody's starving to death. I wonder how that happened. And we'll feed them soya and stuff like that. And these are highly processed. Like, if you know anything about oils and stuff like that, they highly process them. They're very cancer-causing when they get all highly processed, the seed oils, the corn oils, canola oils, and so forth. So, to me, even though they don't realize it, and they virtue signal that they're really good guys, like Peter Zeihan, to me, when I look at their policies and the way they think, or not think, I think they're kind of in a little pool of lies, a bubble of lies. And but anyway, if you look at their policies, I call it a death cult, because with their plans are going to cause lots of death and destruction, and this whole EV thing, it's just a thing. It's going to be total disaster. If if they increase the amount of EVs, to the maximum amount, well, in 5 years, they'll have dumps of EV batteries. Now, we've had ships burnt down because of the EV batteries burning up. You just need a problem in one of the batteries, not even the whole battery, just a part of it, and if it overheats past 80 degrees C, for whatever reason, it goes in, eventually it'll go into uncontrolled burn, basically. It turns into a little rocket, and it'll burn up the whole ship. And they have one off the Cold Strait now during it, and they've done it before. And when they really get going at it, you're going to have these things burning down people's houses. The bigger trucks, like getting a pickup truck, it's a huge firebomb in your house, like by your house. Like, the thing, if it goes, it's going to burn down your whole house, like everything. And apparently in China, they're pumping out EVs and batteries and whatever. I'm not sure what the quality are, but they subsidize them, and then they're just dumping them in fields. Brand new vehicles, no miles on them, just to say that they got more EVs than everybody. this is kind of bull crap that's going on. and if they start firing, like if a battery starts going on them, like these ones in the field, I mean, they'll have a huge toxic burn there, these chemicals and everything, huge clouds of toxic chemicals. We've been having more people setting fires, so we've had some fires, and they're not the greatest air, but we're, all the ash and stuff like that in the air. But these ones will be toxic, very like, we call it stuff that'll, a few milligrams will put you on the ground and kill you. So the governments are just, well, to realize what's going on, you realize that it's a spiritual battle, because it seems that it's hard to believe anybody would be so melodical and violent and awful. I guess there may be, I know there are people, I guess, that are like that, but they're usually kind of possessed that would want to, murder billions of people and do it in horrible ways. I mean, we have that going on in the world right now, and they say that they're doing it for, they justify it by saying they're doing it for the children, like we're going to cut their bodies and mutilate them and drug them and turn them into another creature. I mean, so we have that going on, of destroying people and being justified. So, well, there you go. Anyway, that's kind of my short talk on it. I really didn't go too far into all the things on here, but basically he's kind of a Bilderberg guy. He goes with, I don't really have anything really against them. I just think that they think they're smart, but they're not really that smart. That's what I think. I'm not saying that I'm smart. I'm not, but I'm just saying, they think they can micromanage and they've got it all. Like it just seems, ludicrous what they're trying to do. But and if I don't really like to think people are evil, but some really really come across as that. I like to try to be able to talk to people and try to, no matter what the insanity they believe, I try to bring them out of that. And maybe listening to my talk here, you might start looking yourself. I don't know. Maybe you just think that I'm sending misinformation. I don't know. All I do is I have a definition for truth. Okay? And I base things on that. And truth is this. And it's something that's used for the scientific theory, okay? Truth is, without truth, you can't actually do science. You're trying to find truth. And truth is consistent, meaning you can make a hypothesis and kind of prove it, and if it works with the hypothesis and everything's consistent, then it works, right? And if it doesn't, then it's not truth. And you can't make two opposites truth. Like a square circle. They're not. A square is a square, and a circle is a circle. Yeah. So stuff like that. So truth is consistent and it's eternal, which means it's always been, and even when there wasn't any time, actually, truth was always there. But that's another story. So, but that means that you can look out into the stars and you can use the same principles that you learned on the earth to figure out what are in the stars. Okay, that's because it's eternal and it's omnipresent. It's everywhere. Truth is everywhere. Now that's truth. Now you can say truth is, like in the dictionary, you can say it's based on facts. Well, facts can be interpreted and you can twist facts depending on your reality, okay, or your understanding of reality. But if you have a definition of truth and you try to stick to that definition of truth, then that will actually shape your reality so that you can live in reality rather than live in a fantasy, which is what's going on in the world. But so you use that, and then you can build on that. So, and so if you use that, you'll find that you're listening to a lot of lies. I'm not saying everybody's a lie. They have the different narratives. So you have to be able to learn how to think and how to question using some guides like truth and some logic and reasoning. Okay, but logic and reasoning can, if it's based on wrong assumptions, lead you to conclude that insanity is the way to go. So logic and reason in itself will not get you where you need to go. Okay, that's I'm just saying that right now. So anyway, that's my talk on this. I think that Peter Zeihan, which is interesting, he spells his name differently, but it's pronounced Zion. Anyway, Peter would do himself justice if he actually would actually question his assumptions that he's given. Why, this idea of green, whether it's even valid, which it isn't, if you actually look into the science. But, nobody, there's political science which is going on in that field, IPPC and all that. It's political. But, if you're not trying to destroy things, which is what, a deglobalization, it doesn't have to be any kind of deglobalization. What we really need is to just understand what authority really is, and if we have that understanding, then we can work with authority and be everybody, like the people in authority can do their job properly, and the people that are under that authority will realize they'll take authority to the task. But in this world, I've done a talk on that too, that we don't really understand authority and how to relate to authority, and that's to do with a lot with the French philosophy, but way before that too. But that's another story. So I'm not going to go there because that's another whole story. But if people understood the proper relationship with authority, this would, all these kind of silliness of murders and wars and so forth would actually disappear. But since we don't have a proper understanding of what authority is, people serving under authority and people in authority have no idea what authority really is. Therefore, we have a lot of problems because they don't know what authority is. Proper authority. But I won't talk about that right now. But anyway, you can listen to some of my other talks, and it might give you some ideas. Or you can write some comments, and I'll talk about it. But I'll leave it at that, and may you learn something every day. Question, think, learn what truth is. May God bless you. Bye.